Yeah, sorting through the mess. That's what I was thinking when you were talking and then you said it. Sorting through the mess, being able to sit in it, understand it a little bit, but choosing not to stay there.
Yeah. We have these periods in our life, and I've had quite a life of health issues with a genetic disorder called Ehlers-Danlos Syndrome. Had over 20 surgeries. I have been brought back from the other side. I have been at hospital beds for many months of my life. I have had brain leaks, all these things. And it's like the people who have come into my life because of all of these, some of them were pretty horrific experiences. Like, I can't believe how lucky I am that I found the people I did, and I wouldn't have if it weren't for this disease, this disorder. And so, while I was really just trying to find my way out of chronic pain and all these things, I found a lot of magic. And I feel like that's a lot of information.
Mm. But yeah,
But
you said showing up and wanting to continue to show up. And you just
yes,
so like casually, it rolls off the tongue, like 20 surgeries, I guess a near-death experience, or maybe you did die. I'm not sure. I don't know that part of your story. And being in chronic pain and still showing up. Like, how does one do that? How do you wake up and be a mom to your beautiful daughter, who I love? I haven't met her in person yet, but I call her my bestie because I know that the second I
yes,
get to meet her, we're going to
yes.
be besties for life. It's already written. But how do you show up being someone who experiences chronic pain and still see that magic?
Well, there's been many seasons in my life where I couldn't show up, like literally couldn't walk to go to the bathroom, would have to army crawl. Like, I couldn't show up at all. And it's been a long time since I started meditating, actually, is when like everything shifted for me, because I really was living in constant fear of like what surgery was going to be next. There's a lot of information that's coming out about Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. So like, if you haven't heard of it yet, you will start to meet people or read about it in the news. But for a long time, it was just kind of like doctors wouldn't listen to me. I didn't get diagnosed until I was in my 30s. So it was a lot of like, oh, you're just too active, or you need to work out more. And I'm like, I'm a personal trainer. Like, I live in the gym, not feeling heard for a really long time, and just being told that it wasn't that bad, even though I needed surgeries and they were always having to operate. And so I just like shut down for a long, long time. And then I wouldn't even go to the doctor for pretty serious things. And by the time I would go, they would be like, well, why didn't you come sooner? And it's like, well, because every time I come, basically tell me nothing's wrong with me, or that it's like a trending thing to have, where when all I wanted was a diagnosis so I could like figure out how to live better. And so, yeah, there's a lot of times where I just really was in a dark place. I had suicidal ideations with chronic pain. I felt very isolated and alone for so long. And I've been in those periods off and on where it's like, I feel so guilty because I am like, a white woman with a lot of privilege and access to see whoever I want almost, and I have great friends and family and an awesome partner, but I didn't ever want to be a burden. And that really also stems from like childhood stuff. My mom, where basic needs were often a burden, and I never want to be that person. I want to be the person showing up and like helping you. And then seriously, within 4 days of starting meditation, like an actual practice of like 1 in the morning, 1 in the afternoon, bookends. On the 4th day of that, my whole life changed, and I've never gone back. So like, while I wake up and I have, a few weeks ago, I was in bed because my lower back is starting to hurt again, and my hip, and I get Harper out the door. Like, there's things I have to do and that need to get done. But then I come and lay in bed, for 6 hours or go sit in my sauna or whatever it is that I need to do. But really, since meditation, I've never gotten back to that place of such complete fear. I'm more in a like, okay, if something hurts and I might need another surgery, I'm like, okay, great. Like, I'm going to do everything I can before that surgery to prepare for it. I always train for surgeries, body allowing, like I did when I was a competitive snowboarder. I want to be as strong as I can. I need my body to be, detoxed and clean. And a lot of meditation and work around that and going into surgery with, nervous system down. And I just know that I'm taken care of. And as long as I have my breath, I'm okay. But, there are days when I want to set my hair on fire when I'm trying to parent a toddler. But breaking that generational trauma between mothers and daughters. Like, I'm not going to make my daughter feel like a burden because she's 4 years old and is a kiddo and has her needs. Like, she needs me. And so it's my responsibility to do everything I can to not snap. Because I was getting there at one point and I immediately was like, okay, I need to go back to therapy. I started microdosing. Again, this is like a very first world thing where I had a friend who gave me really good advice. She was a client turned one of my best friends now. If like there was anything that was causing stress between Eric and I that money could fix, do it. And if you have it, and that was for me calling a babysitter more often and taking time to go cold plunge and sauna and self-care. So while life with chronic pain and parenting like don't really go hand in hand together, it's my responsibility to take care of myself. And just like it is, like, even if before I had Harper, to be a better parent or a better partner, a better friend, like to do as much as I can. And sometimes the best I could do was lay in bed and just maybe text a friend. And sometimes also asking friends for help because friends like to help,
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Meditation. I love what you said about that fourth session. Not that for everybody it's that, but I'm also thinking too, like you're going to all these doctors, they're discovering more about, your diagnosis and all those things. I wasn't at these doctor's appointments with you, but I'm probably certain that they weren't prescribing meditation and breath, right? But how did you discover this practice and these bookends? Like, what were you actually doing? I mean, I know I meditate, I know what that is, but for those listening, sometimes people are like, well, I can't quiet my mind or I can't sit there. And how do you meditate? What did those bookends look like? What were you doing?
Yeah, no doctors were giving me any advice on what to do. There is, prescribing medications and things like that. But my neurosurgeon, actually, I had my first spine surgery about 12 years ago. And within that spine surgery, I got a brain leak and then had to be in the hospital and was so drugged up. I was like in like a drug-induced coma state, breathing on my own, but remember nothing because they had to get a team of doctors, of neurosurgeons together to figure out how to operate on this brain leak that I had. They didn't know where it was located. They're calling my family, somebody needs to get out to California. And when I woke up from this surgery, I can't remember if it was my neurosurgeon or one of the doctors saying, you might find yourself having a really hard time after this surgery because while you don't remember any of what happened this last week, your body does. And I didn't know what they meant. And I was also just 2 years clean too. So like all my other surgeries, I would drink and do drugs after because painkillers made me so sick. And I was also just a drug addict. So there is that. But so this was also my first surgery clean. So I didn't have any of those things. I was in a neck brace, which felt very scary. And all of a sudden I started having panic attacks and like hyperventilating. And I would just be on a walk with my dog and I would be like a mess on the side of the road. And my neurosurgeon was like, do you paint? And I was like, I don't really know how. And he goes, go get an easel and some paint and like, let's start tapping into that part of the brain when you go into these moments or before that happens. And so I started painting a lot and loving that and finding like some calm in that. And then I needed a second surgery not long after that on my spine. And I was in so much pain and I was so angry and frustrated. And before that, I had had 5 shoulder reconstructions, full hip reconstruction in between the 2 spine surgeries, 3 knee surgeries, a full ankle surgery, appendectomy. Like I'd had all these joints operated on, but I didn't really understand the spine And it's like that how spine pain really affects your emotional stability. So I'm in my neurosurgeon's office and I'm crying and I'm cussing. And he's like looking at the x-ray and he's like, I see what's wrong. Your neck isn't broken. You're not going to die. You do need surgery, but I will not operate on you when you are this heightened. Your surgery, your recovery will be so much harder. And he told me I needed to see the pain psychologist, which in my mind was, again, somebody saying, it's not that bad. This pain isn't real. Like, go see a shrink and you need to meditate. And I told him to fuck off. I slammed the door, said, fuck you. And I went back with my tail between my legs and agreed to see the pain psychologist and didn't meditate for like 12 years later. 6 years later, 7 years later, I guess, I still talk to that pain psychologist to this day. And it really was after 5 more spine surgeries throughout the years, I really injured my neck really horribly and was given the gift of desperation, basically. I had started meditating a little bit with the Insight timer, and I had a spine surgery, and then I got another brain leak. This one wasn't as bad, so I wasn't unconscious, but I had to lay completely flat in the hospital for a week before the next surgery. I typed in pain and the topics for you can, type in whatever you're going through on Insight and it will fill your feed with different meditations or Dharma talks and things that go along with that. And this teacher, David G, popped up and he had a meditation on the body's ability to heal and repair itself. I listened to that probably thousands of times in the following months. Like right before surgery that morning, immediately after, and for the months following, probably 3 times a day. And the mantras, just everything resonated so much with me, but I was still kind of just crisis meditating, right? Because I was in so much pain and I was miserable. Like I was desperate. And then I was scrolling on Instagram months later, because I wasn't able to work for over a year after that surgery, that a studio in Los Angeles was doing a teacher training with David G. And I had been attending some live meditations too in Venice. But again, it was just like, oh, I'm free tonight, I'll go to one, but not establishing like a real practice. And I was like, this could be really good for me to, I just wanted to learn more about meditation, like what it really was and all the different techniques and styles and things, and to deepen my practice. And so I did this teacher training with David G. And it was 6 weeks, like 200 hours. And we had to meditate twice a day, every day, the entire time. And we did it through the Unplugged meditation app, which I'm now on with healing meditations. Every meditation we listened to was a different teacher, a different style, different techniques. You find your people with the voice you like, or, guided visualizations, mantra meditations, all these different things. So you were experiencing the whole spectrum of meditation, probably outside of TM. And on the 4th day, I realized I hadn't taken a painkiller in 3 days. Hadn't even thought about them. I was sitting at a coffee shop studying in Venice, and I was like, whoa, like it blew my mind because I was just recovering from this huge spine surgery. I was still in a lot of pain. I took those things, a couple times a day. I checked in with my body and I was like, I hurt, but I could just be with it. And that's like how I am now. It's like, pain comes, but I'm not afraid of it anymore either. Like I'm not afraid of it. I'm not going to say that I don't cry and get angry, that it's there sometimes or holding me back from doing something I want, but I'm not afraid of it like I used to be. And I was also just afraid of the world. Like when I grew up in a really not great home with my mom when I was little. She was a lovely person, beautiful, but she was very sick and a lot of childhood abuse. And, that followed into my choices as an adult in relationships too, of like that pretty textbook. I was engaged to a drink to die alcoholic who was abusive, just like my mother, So I was afraid of the world and I didn't know how to make very good decisions. And I was also just a person who felt safe, right? We're talking about that mess we're sorting through where you're like, oh, I should get rid of this, but it feels safe to keep it. I felt safer with the extremes of things are really good or really bad. But if things are just like right here and mellow and like floating along, that was really uncomfortable for me. And I would do things to sabotage that, whether it was a relationship or maybe a job, usually relationships. If somebody was like actually really good for me and I was like, can't have that, like
Too safe, too good.
Yep. So once with meditation, after that fourth day, it was like, they say it's not always what happens in the meditation, but what happens outside of it, right? Like, what is your world like afterwards? And it really was like, it was like a movie. I feel like all of a sudden I could just like walk around like the streets and I'd be like, oh, the flowers and like bluebirds and things, and my anxiety changed. I used to carry around Klonopin or Xanax as well, just in case. Like I always knew it was by me if I needed it. And it's like all of a sudden my anxiety, I tell this to a lot of clients now because it really helped me. And I do this with my pain as well. So when COVID started, I got a lot more clients, right? Virtual meditation clients all over the world. And it was like teaching them to talk to their to their anxiety like you would a little kid, right? When a little kid falls and scraped their knees, you're like, that hurts, doesn't it? Yeah, you fell and you scraped it, and that's a hard thing to fall on. And yeah, that does hurt, like for me, I'm not going to be like, oh, it's not that bad, get up. It's like, okay, let's talk about what happened and look at where we are and then kind of take care of it and then move on from there. So with anxiety, I could tell people during the pandemic of like, well, of course you have anxiety. Like none of us have lived through a pandemic. Mm-hmm. This is new. Like you should have anxiety and it's okay. It's there. And so while some people, it took a lot longer than others to kind of adopt that practice, I do that I really like rarely get anxiety anymore. But if my neck is hurting in the middle of the night, I'm like, yeah, your neck should hurt. Even though you're a year and a half out of your last surgery, you could still be healing. You have a lot of titanium in there that it's not normal. Like this is a foreign object in your body. Like just talk to it and it kind of like it dissipates, And so whenever there's something with, anxiety too, I'm like, yeah, you should feel anxious. Like you've never been a mother to a toddler during the state of where we are, you want to protect her. And so it's just weird. Like it's wild. And it is truly what everybody said it was, right? But I was like, no, I'm just like an athlete. Like I can't meditate. I don't meditate. It's like, I wish I would have had it as a child.